Hello, I'm Catherine Sines, the president of the Rotary Club of Hudson. Rotary is a professional organization of a group of men and women who support Rotary International. We also join together by a common interest of service to our Hudson community, and we have a sincere desire to give back. We meet weekly on Wednesdays at Laurel Lake Retirement Community, 200 Laurel Lake Drive, in their dining room. We meet from 7:30 to 8:30 and would like to invite you to join us. For more information about Rotary, go to www.rotaryhudson.org. Enjoy the following excerpts from one of our recent meetings and consider joining us on Wednesday morning.
Good morning, Rotarians and guests.
Good morning, Ron.
Welcome to the Rotary Club of Hudson. I'm Ron Strobel, the Sergeant at Arms. Our invocation this morning is by Jim Ahern. Did you know that?
No.
You're on for the first week of September.
You can pray.
For what? As a famous person once said, I forgot.
You're good.
Right? Ask for new. You got one in your back pocket, don't you?
You know that feel, ooh, yeah, what?
All right, let's bow our heads. Lord, we ask for your support and your grace and your love for a great organization not only for Hudson, but for the United States and the world. We ask for your grace and help in making us have a great day and make great decisions for our family and our lives. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Pretty good.
Thank you, Jim. And doing double duty today, being a greeter and lead us in the pledge and the four-way test, Rebecca Moore.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First.
Is it the truth?
Second.
Is it fair to all concerned?
Third.
Will build goodwill and better friendships?
Fourth.
Will be beneficial to all concerned?
And I will not sing.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's good to have you in the club. And we need more new members. That way we can get them up here to lead the pledge and four-way test. To lead us in song, Dick Pearsall.
Okay.
All right.
I just got acquainted with Maddie this morning, and the special song that I have, we'll probably use it next week. Anyway, we're going to sing America, because that's, she knows that there are not any words necessary on that. So here we go. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrims bright, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. And now our president, Catherine Sines.
Thank you. Thank you, Ron. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And I just turn it over to Joe Zapakowski. Are you prepared? Did you forget?
You forgot.
Yes, I forgot.
Good morning, Joe.
Good morning. Good morning, Rotarians.
Good morning, Joe.
We have some guests to introduce. First, Ralph Day is my guest, his second visit. Ralph, if you would stand, we'll... Dr. Bob Graves, good morning. And Tony Watson, second meeting, guest of Dave Basil. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. This morning, we don't have a lot of announcements, but we do have two. One was me, and it's just to tell everyone that this weekend at the Saturday is the Heritage Fair at the Stowe Airport. It's free. You can go through airplanes. There's a pancake breakfast. It's a real nice event. So if you're thinking about something to do on Saturday, it's supposed to be halfway decent weather. So, and I will be there all day. So we'll get to see you. And then Ed Sogan.
Just a couple of things. Taste of Hudson was last weekend. We just wrapped up the cleanup yesterday, and final tents are coming down today. But thanks to all those who attended, and especially those who volunteered and helped work the event. I'll have an update once all the figures are in, and give that to you within the next couple of weeks. We had Fine Day coming up is for the hurricane relief for down in Texas, and obviously, once again, we're going to get hit. Looks like Florida's going to get hit pretty good. So, bring a few bucks for next week's effort. And again, most of you, I'm sure all of you, have contributed in some way prior to that. But we want to do this in behalf of our Rotary organization. So, Fine Day next week for the Hurricane Relief Fund. Last week at the football game and during this week, I believe, right, the motto is Hudson for Houston, and the kids at the game and also at all the schools are having fundraising for the hurricane funds, so, and it goes to the food bank, so that's in progress. Last thing is there's a football game, kind of on a positive note. We're playing Canton McKinley at the new Hall of Fame Stadium down in Canton. It's at 7 o'clock, and it should be a barn burner in regards to a game in a fabulous facility. If you look at the state of Ohio, it's probably one of the nicest facilities that you can host a football game in. So if you're looking forward to attending that, get down there early. If you'd like to see the Hall of Fame prior to, that'd probably be a nice combination, and enjoy some great high school football this Friday night. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ed. Is there anyone else? Oh.
No need to applaud.
He applauds for himself. Is there anyone else that needs to any announcements or anything to say? Okay. Great. So we're going to introduce our speaker, and I don't have a long bio or a long explanation. He's going to do that himself. Larry Lohman from the Kent Rotary, he's going to speak on the water projects. And just to remind you all that this month is Rotary Month. Kind of worried me when he got up and walked the other direction. It's like...
Thank you, Snap. You're used to that.
Good.
Well, good morning. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. As was said, I am Larry Lohman. I am with the Rotary Club of Kent. I also sit on the District Grants Committee. So over the past 7 years, I think, is what I've been there now. I've been able to help other clubs as well as help with the projects I'm going to talk about here in a minute. Getting the grants pushed through RI or just local grants. A couple years ago, Northampton did their first grant ever, and I was able to help past District Governor Jim McKee get that pushed through. It is their Rotary Swims project, and it went through without a hitch, and it helped a lot of young people. So today what I'm here to talk about, though, is water projects in Central America, specifically in El Salvador. These projects are what's going on down there, and we call it TAP, so nothing, the Agua project. We keep water in the name. Let's see. There we go. El Salvador itself, it's the smallest Central American country. It's about the size of the state of Massachusetts. They house, the population is 6.5 million people. About 3 million of them are actually here in the U.S. So their currency down there, they use the U.S. dollar. because the people that are here are sending the money back as they work. Most of the 3,000 are here are the undocumented aliens that come across the border. I mean, they fled the war in the 80s in El Salvador, and they haven't returned. You know, they've been able to make a good life for themselves and support their families that are down there. Little picture of El Salvador here. You can see up towards, or San Salvador is towards the middle of the country. That's the capital. If we go down, that's where we fly into. The two predominant areas are in the northern section, Suchitoto, which is the orange name right along the long lake there, and then Santa Marta. Santa Marta is the area that we're in with the current water project, which this club has helped out with as a cluster with the rest of the clusters. So 90% of all groundwater in El Salvador is non-potable. It cannot be drank. It's polluted. It's and we'll see pictures here in a minute. It's really bad. Now, on the other hand, 88% of the villages in El Salvador now have fresh water. But most of those are going to be the larger cities where the larger populations are. The ones that do suffer are the villages that are out along the mountainsides, out in the country that, you know, are a little bit less economic structure. So, and these are the villages that we go out and we look for. The big thing with any kind of global grant, whether it's water, going out to, you know, the hurricane disasters throughout the Caribbean, the earthquake disasters like down in Ecuador 2 years ago. Any of those kind of areas that we're going into, the one thing we got to do is make sure that these projects can help multiple generations, just not the one we're working with right now. And I will describe how we do this with the water projects as we go along here. Kind of the first step that we get into when we're going out and selecting villages is we will find a couple villages. We'll go meet with the elders of the village or the full village. This meeting was back in 2005, and it's in a community called Zacamel Dos. Wayne Titus, he is the past district governor of District 6400 up in Michigan, is here talking with the villagers. The big thing is we don't go in and we do not bring up water when we go into these meetings. What we do is we go in, we say, you know, give us the top 10 things that would help your community the most. 9 times out of 10, water is either the number one or the number two thing that can help that community out the most. From that point, we start working on trying to get the community's buy-in. Without their buy-in, that they will, you know, form a water committee to oversee these projects, so that they, you know, if the pump goes down or something happens that it gets replaced, we can't move forward. I mean, sustainability is the number one aspect that we got to look at when we're doing global grants. The other thing is by getting the buy-in of the communities, all non-technical labor is done by the village itself. Rotary does not go in there. We do not put people on the ground to do the work. If we do that, we're taking food out of the mouths of the villagers. So what we do is we put the money there to help support them. They do all the non-technical. Any of the technical labor, if the village has anybody who can do it, they get first dibs. If not, then we go to the larger cities such as Suchitoto or into San Salvador, and we'll find the proper people, but all the work stays in country. And that way, the money that we're sending down, that we're working hard up here to put together, is going to benefit that country and the local regions. What we've done with our projects, the first couple projects that we did, water-wise, are sitting on the electrical grid down there. It's very expensive. The average household in El Salvador, or in these villages, makes anywhere from about $400 a year to maybe up to $1,000, depending on where they are, what kind of crops they're growing, if they have any animals that they are, raising. So water, having to pay for water is just an added expense. A lot of these communities, though, are willing to do it. I mean, so much that the water costs tend to be about 1/3 of their yearly income. So if it's on the electrical grid. So now what we've done with our last project, which we finished in 2010, which is Zacamel Dos, which I mentioned a minute ago, we went to solar. They're no longer on the electrical grid. So we're using solar platforms, which one is actually in the background of this picture. That solar platform is powerful enough to run 2 turbo pumps, and then also charge a bank full of batteries. But the nice thing is, El Salvador, it's sunny all the time. Even during the rainy season, they may have rain for a couple hours throughout a day or throughout each day, but the rest of the time it's sunny. So they are able to charge their batteries. They're able to get the water to the holding tanks. So now the way these systems work, we're not drilling wells. One, El Salvador is one volcanic mess when it comes to the rock. Trying to drill through that would cost a fortune. So what we've done, because it's mountainous, there are springs everywhere. So what we do is we go and we test the springs, make sure that the capacity of the water coming out is going to be able to sustain the size of the village that we're working with for years to come. We also look for a secondary source, so we're not dependent on that primary. So we always have 2 sources of water per village. But what we do is we take and we cap those springs, put a cavitation tank on it. That way the runoff, the animal feces from the runoff's not getting into it. The villagers aren't going down anymore and bathing in it and washing their clothes and trying to take the water back up to their homes from that individual source. So it keeps that water relatively clean. So from the cavitation tanks, we pump it into a holding system that we can gather a lot of water in without having to use the jets. Then we use the jet pumps and we pump it up above the village into holding tanks where it will gravity feed back through some sort of sanitation system, whether it's a chlorination station, gravel or sand filters. It just depends on the village to what we can put in. So, and then it comes down into the village, and where Rotary stops is we can't go into any homes. We can't go into personal property and do upgrades. So what we do is we put a micro or a macro meter right at the edge of the property. We tie the line right to it, and then the homeowners, they can tie into that and bring it into their homes for running water. So every home will get a macro meter or a micrometer. It depends on the project. This also helps because we do set up a water board down there. It's an elected group, and it's actually wasn't necessarily our idea as Rotary to do this. This is actually one of the stipulations put forth by the El Salvadorian government. So if we were going to be doing these projects, they wanted an elected board to oversee these so that it was sustainable. And this is one of the big portions of sustaining this project. This water board, they collect the fees for the water per house. Each house gets about 5 cubic meters month, I believe is what the actual lot or the allotment is. If they go over that, then they're charged extra. So far, nobody's ever gone over it because they are so, they look at how much water they use every day. They only use enough, and they still walk down to the river and clean their clothes. They will not use this water to clean their clothes. Now, a couple of the people do use it to water their gardens now. So, it's a lot easier than walking down and bringing, a 5-gallon jug up on their head or whatever. So it's rather nice. But the other important thing is with the water board, if a pump goes down, they check all the systems every day. So they have to walk up to the holding tanks, make sure there's no leaks. They got to go to the pumps, make sure the pumps are running. And if one goes down for some reason, the funds that come in from the households, they should have enough money there to replace them. All the pumps have 5-year warranties on them. So in the first 5 years, that gives them 5 years to build up enough to replace a pump when they go out. The average pump life is about 3 to 5 years with as much as they run. Zacamel Dos, we've replaced 2 pumps already, and that project's been running since 2010, both under warranty, so they didn't have to take any money out of their account. So, little story about that. Usually, my friend Yvonne, who's right in the middle with the Suchi Toto shirt on, he usually goes down around and speaks with me. He used to be out of Indianapolis with Kokota, which is the partner organization we use down there. And unfortunately, he no longer lives in Indianapolis, so he couldn't come over today with me. He's now in Miami, Florida, and that's just a little bit too far away. And actually, I don't know if he's there or in Nicaragua or El Salvador right now. So, but he goes in every 6 months to these villages and checks the books with the commissions. And just to make sure, everything's good, money's going to the proper place and everything. He went into Zacamel Dos 6 months after they got up and running, so it would have been probably early 2011 when he went in and checked. And he's sitting there, he's looking over the books, and he's just, numbers aren't adding up. They should have had $7,000 in their account, and he's seeing $4,000. And he starts looking around, he's going, what's going on here? He goes, did you guys have a pump go down? And if so, why'd you guys pay for it? He goes, we're missing like $3,000. What's going on? And everybody's kind of just snickering around him. He's kind of getting upset. And finally, I guess they felt the joke was, gone far enough. The head of the water board, who was also at the time the head of the village, she walked up and handed him a piece of paper. He looks down, and it took him about a minute or two to realize what he was looking at, but he was looking at a CD from a bank. So not only are we, teaching responsible practices and sustainable practices to these commissions, they're getting a chance for economics to actually, take the money and build it. So, there's a lot of things that go on with these global grants that you may not think of when you're writing them that are going to happen afterwards. And after seeing that, now when I write my future grants, I can add that in, and I'm just waiting on the next thing that we're not seeing that's going to happen. Which is really, it's really great to see when you get down there. I've been down there now twice, and I'm going to be heading back down here in about a little over a month and a half, which I was here a couple months ago and, made the invitation if anybody would like to go down October 27th through November 3rd. That invitation is still open. You just need to see me this week because we got to get all of our plans set up for down there. But I've had the pleasure of meeting with these villagers twice now at several locations. And, the first thing they say is, as soon as I walk in, whether I have a Rotary shirt on or not, they know it's Rotary that's coming to visit them. And it's like a party when you walk in there. We went into Zacamel Dos the first time I was there, and all of a sudden, this bright-eyed, big smile came running at me, and I'm sitting there going, I looked at Yvonne, and I'm sitting there going, he's like, it's all right, it's all right. All of a sudden, I'm embracing a huge hug, and I'm sitting there going, what'd I do? Yeah, it's just so nice. When you get down there, you know, you always see smiles. You know, they may not have a lot of money down there. They don't have a lot of money, plain and simple. They don't know that necessarily. They don't understand, you know, what we think as poverty. They really don't. They think it's day-to-day life. You know, they have food on their table because they are subsistence farmers. They're getting clean water, or we've done the project and they have clean water. So that's made their life, you know, 100 times better, because now they don't have to go, you know, walk a mile or two to get water, or walk a mile or two to take a bath in the morning, so the kids can actually go to school. The women in the households can actually have jobs, because they don't have to be making sure that the water's all the time at the house, because now it's there. So it gives them time. So, I mean, we've done, let's see, there we go. Just kind of an idea, you know, this is just a little picture of the running water in one of their houses. It's not like what we would think of, you know, a traditional sink or anything like that. They have an open area. They put the plumbing where they can put it. So, the first project we did, completed, was in, I'm not even gonna try to say the name, sorry. This project, it had 50 families, and the reason for this was their walk to get water was called the Walk of Death. It was down a mountainside, and it's about a 1.5 mile walk straight down, and straight back up. And the women were walking down. I wish I had the picture from this individual place of a mother walking down with laundry on her head, a child under one arm, and holding a water jug, 5-gallon water jug empty in the other hand, going down this 1.5 walk. I have actually done this walk, and I will be doing it again in October. It's, you know, luckily they've made a secondary route to come back up. It's a little longer, but it's not nearly as steep, and it's not nearly as treacherous. What I can say is my walk down, I did not drop any of the beer that was in my bottle. So, but, so, you know, that was one of the projects. El Zapote was our second project. This was the first project that our district was part of and Kent was part of. There's 45 families now. There are, I think there's 70 families now in that village since they've gotten water. And both these villages now we're looking at going back and trying to retrofit solar into. These two villages are on the power grid, unfortunately. So the next project after we get done with the current project we're doing that we're all members of, we will go back to retrofit these two. So Zacamil Dos was the first solar project we did, and just by chance, it's the first solar project in El Salvador. So Rotary led the way on technology in El Salvador. We brought the first solar project to the country. Now every project that comes in, the federal government asks that it is solar. It takes the load off of the power grid. It helps out those villages tremendously. Drops the average cost of the monthly from anywhere from $12 to $13 a month for their water down to $1 a month if we go to solar, and all that money on the solar goes straight into their accounts for future repairs or upgrades to the systems. Nothing goes back to the government, or it goes back to the electric company. So it's 100% profit for the village itself. Again, Zacamel Dos started out with 45 families. We always make sure that our water sources can usually double the amount of families that are there, because we expect that the villages will grow once they have clean water, because the kids are going to want to stay now. They'll stay. They'll work the fields. They can get to and from the cities to work now from their village, and they have time. So I believe Zacamel Dos, the last time I was there, was up to about 60 families as well now on the system. The current project that we're doing is El Rodeo. It's up in the northern area where I pointed out Santa Marta. It actually, the two cities were actually one at one time, and they split. And Santa Marta's the older families. El Rodeo is younger families. So this was land that was promised to them after the war, because they were driven. This area of Santa Marta was driven from El Salvador during the war in the 80s, the Civil War. They actually lived on a riverbank between El Salvador and Honduras for about 7-8 years. And they couldn't go anywhere because they had the Honduran army with guns focused on them, not allowing them into the country, and the El Salvadorian government with guns trained on them, not letting them back into their own country. So they were refugees, and they lived on the banks of the river for about 7 to 8 years before they were welcomed home. The last trip I made 2 years ago, I was able to go to their big celebration they have every year for the return of the refugees to the village. And it was something special. It was very upbeat. I mean, soccer games going, they had soccer matches all day long. They had festival rides. I mean, it was one big party. And so we were very excited to be a part of it. This project in total is $190,000, just about. There are three different groups who are contributing to this. Our portion of it is $64,850, which is all contributions have been raised. All contributions will be in and finalized this month to the Rotary Foundation, so we can get the money down to El Salvador so we can start the project next month. The other two organizations, one is the Japanese government, and they are contributing, I want to say about 40 to 50,000 as well. And then there's a large church out of Washington, D.C., which is the third member of this. And they are, I forget what their total is, but they are contributing the remainder. So there's three groups going in on this. It's a very large project. I don't know if you probably can't see that too well. Basically, that's the trail going down to their water source. It's a 1.5 mile trail from the village. It's not nearly as rugged of a trail as other villages have been in the past. The only problem was they were stealing the water off somebody else's land. That's where they got the water. Part of this project was to purchase that land, or at least the land that the spring sat on, which has been accomplished. We also have gotten the secondary spring, which is on the same land about 300 yards away from the main spring, and both pieces have been purchased, so we are able to move forward under what RI requires before we move. The lower picture shows the stream that the spring is running into. It's very milky white. that is, most of your waterways look like that, you know, the springs and everything, because of just the basic pollution. The one other thing we have to always check for, and we, you know, test these waters for heavy metals. Luckily, there are no heavy metals in the sources we're using. It's just the pollution, so we'll be able to take care of that through sanitation stations, chlorination stations. This is actually the primary source. So if you look up towards about the middle of the pictures, there's like just a small puddle of water right there. That's the actual spring basin. So the spring has been tested. This spring can manage up to 120 families for what our purposes are. This village right now is 60 families, but is expected to expand over the next couple years to 120. Our last delegation trip 2 years ago, these are the members. There were 3 Rotarians on this trip, and then several others from other places. We were meeting with the elders of El Rodeo. There's 3 of them on the far side, and then the one kneeling is the mayor. It would be the equivalent of a mayor of our cities. What we're finding now is that the average age of the individuals who run the cities, or the elders, considered the elders now, is 20 to 25 years old. Reason being is they're the ones who have the education. And the elders feel that they've gone to school, they have the education, they should be the ones making the decisions and bringing them back to us. So the one thing with these folks, I was able to, on that trip, to let them know, because I found out while I was down there that RI, Rotary International, had approved our grant application. So I was able to, or not approved, but approved that we move forward on it, I should say, because our grant application was approved in January. Also, that all of our commitments were met 2 years ago when I was down there, and the final one came in while I was down there, so I was able to tell them. The reaction from them was just, I don't have words to explain it. You know, it was pure elation, I guess, would be the best way.
Not to interrupt you, but while you're talking about that,
Yeah.
can you explain to everybody how that works, the grant
Yeah.
matching and stuff?
Yep.
Because not all, until I started being the treasurer, I didn't understand that.
No problem. All right, it's a very good question, how the grant works. Here in our district, we have a very active grant committee, which is unusual throughout most districts. But we meet, we have through our district website, you can go on, you can take and put a grant inquiry into the system. Doesn't have to be anything elaborate, just saying, okay, this is our idea, this is what we intend to raise for this project. At that point, it'll go to our board meeting. We will look it over and say, okay, this is fundable, it's not fundable. If it's not fundable, we'll say, come back and say, hey, here's ways to make this fundable. We help you. Once you get to that point and you're starting to raise your funds, it's really, the way RI's got this set up is great, because if you raise $10,000 at club level, you get a dollar-for-dollar match from, this is for global grants, from our district. The district gets dollar-for-dollar match from Rotary International, and the club from Rotary International gets 50 cents on the dollar. So if you put $10,000 in, you've now just raised $35,000 through the matching process. So the way our district gets the money is every Rotarian every year, any contributions we make to the Rotary Foundation in a given year comes back to or 50% of that comes back to the district 3 years later. So that's where we're getting our matching funds from at district level. And then the other 50% goes into our World Fund, which is where we get RI's match from. So the money that we send to Rotary International, or to the Rotary Foundation, predominantly all comes back to us in the form of grants. So we can use that money and go and help communities like this. So that's how it works. And then throughout the grant process, anybody who's doing a grant, whether it's local, which is we do a $3,500 match at most for local grants. So you'd have to raise $3,500. We'll give you $3,500. It'd be $7,000. You can go above that as a club, but we can only match up to $3,500 locally. Or you go globally, and we can match. Well, we can match as much as we can manage in our budget. So, but you'll be assigned a liaison to help you through the whole process. Matter of fact, if it was in this area, you get most likely myself as a liaison, or Pat Myers from the other Rotary Club, the Clock Tower Club. We are the two local liaisons for this, for North Summit and Portage County. So, and then we'll work through the whole process with you, and we'll help you write it. We'll say, okay, well, this is, a good way to write it, word things. This is not. This will get you through RI, this won't, basically. So, I mean, I have one more story, and then I'm going to open up questions. At the end of Zach Mildos, again, this is Yvonne, one of his stories that he always tells. He was going in, checking out the final preparations before they really turn the water system over to the village. So they're going through checking taps and everything like that. And he's walking up past this one house, and this grandmother comes out and starts yelling at this group of kids walking up past him, and he's just kind of going, what's going on? Luckily he knows Spanish quite well, so he's able to understand what she's saying. And she's going, where have you been? I haven't been able to make breakfast because you haven't brought me water today. And it was her grandson. Her grandson's just kind of looking at her, kind of dumbfounded, and she's just going on, and finally he just kind of looks at her and goes, Grandma. And you have water. And she just kind of looked at Yvonne, and she looked back at the faucet sitting right next to her, and she broke down crying. Yvonne went over and talked to her, and she goes, I never thought in my life or my kids' lives we'd ever have water. We'd always have to go get it. So with that, just think about what water means around the world. 72% of the world's covered with water. Most of it's salt. Fresh water, there's not a whole lot, that's not polluted. So it all needs treated. So any questions?
You mentioned that I think what percentage of the people's budgets are used for water? Was it like a third?
It's almost a third.
Is that the same after one of these? What is it?
No, it drops down to, I mean, it's so minute.
A tiny fraction.
Yeah, it's a tiny fraction of it. It economically, it helps them out a lot by being solar.
After these projects, are there projects that El Salvador are undertaking on their own?
El Salvador, the government down there,
Yeah.
is always doing projects.
I mean, water projects like you're doing in remote
They don't
villages.
do so much the water projects because there are so many organizations that come down and wish to help with that. It frees them up to do other projects like roads or economic restructuring in areas. So it's, us coming down and being able to help out with one aspect of life down there opens up, a lot of room for them to do other things. So.
Would you explain a little bit about your COCODA?
COCODA?
The the, 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 the partner organization, and how that relates to, 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 limiting the amount of kleptocracy that goes on, because having worked in that area, I know that it's a constant challenge to defy the traditional approach to getting things done.
Working with COCODA, COCODA is a in this United States is an NGO, or non-governmental organization. In El Salvador, they are not an NGO. We actually are down there. They are an organization. They're just not distinguished as that yet. They are in Nicaragua at this point, but we use another organization as well. We use COCODA for all of our interaction through Rotary. Then for our interaction with the government down there, COCODA and a group called ADIS work together. And ADIS is an NGO in El Salvador. But anything that we do through Rotary, we got to do with a nonprofit organization, a cooperating organization. So COCODA is the cooperating organization we use, and they pretty much handle all the aspects of this project on the ground down in El Salvador for us. So instead of having to have Rotarians traveling to and from El Salvador for, once I get this project going, 9 months, or the length I've been working on getting this project up, which is 3 years, we have people on the ground already. So it makes life easier for us. They set up the delegation trips that we go down, and so we can visit these villages. They make sure the funds are going to all the proper channels and out to the proper people. So, and then they oversee the funds and the sustainability after Rotary has completed the project. So, I hope that answers what you're looking for.
More or less. We've just found it very challenging. I work with an organization called Sustainable Harvest International, which used to function in El Salvador.
Right.
But because of the corruption on the ground, particularly, and it turned out the partner organization, we had to move out of that.
The government has changed quite a bit over the last few years.
Yeah.
What was known as the rebels down there now hold the government. It's very well split between 3 parties down there right now. But the corruption level is a lot less. They realize that these organizations are down there to help the people. And so we are not, the only people that we've had to grease palms with are the electric company, and that's why we're going away from it.
Thank you, Larry. My question, so you mentioned that you select a couple of villages that might be a good fit for a project. Have you ever gone out to a village and turned them down? If so, what does that look like? That has to be pretty
actually, yes. And we are currently working on that village. 10 years ago, we visited El Rodeo. Or actually more than 10 years ago, is 11 years ago now. And they were not ready. They couldn't sustain the project. The village wasn't mature enough to manage it, and we had those discussions. But what we do is we don't turn anybody down. We'll continue to visit them as they grow. We'll help direct them, or COCODA and ADIS will help direct them in the proper ways to grow so they can get to the point that we can do a project with them. So at this point, they're the only village that we went into over the last, or since the early 90s, that we haven't been able to do the first time around. But now we are there. We're doing what we came in and told them we'd help them with originally, and they did everything that they needed to do to grow. And it took them 9 years up to the time that we started this project. And so yeah, we will not turn a village down, flat out down. We will help them through their growing process.
Thank you.
Larry, what do you do for when you're not doing this sort of work? And how long have you been involved in this?
I've been involved with the water projects now 6 or 7 years. As long as I've been on the district grants committee, I've been involved with this project, or these projects. I've been a Rotarian for 11. Outside of this, I have, a wife and 2 teenage daughters that keep me quite busy, as well as I own and operate 2 security companies in Portage and Summit counties. So, and then I work alongside other organizations to do grants. So I absolutely love doing grants. The research portion of it is just, to me, is one of the most amazing things. So.
Have you learned to speak Spanish?
No. I'm trying. My daughter is a freshman at Roosevelt High School in Kent, and she's taking Spanish. So I'm hoping she can refresh me from when I took Spanish, 20-some years ago. But, so hopefully, I will be able to, but right now it's very minute. I can read it, though. When I'm down there, I can read the menus just fine. So, when it comes to food, I was going to say outside of that, I've actually been a Rotarian probably 40-some years, because from the day I was born, my father was a Rotarian. So I was involved in Rotary as long as I can remember. So.
Thank you. It's just amazing. It makes us realize how much we're doing to help the world. That we're part of that. To wrap up the meeting, I want to thanks to greeters, Larry Stanton, Rebecca Moore, Audio-Visual Group, Den Rich, Tom Page, Tom Tobin, Ron Barnhouse, didn't forget your day, and greeters, Larry Stanton and Rebecca Moore, and Audio-Visual crew. I also, I wanted to make sure that I mentioned, if you haven't met Maddie Corrine, please do. She's our service learning volunteer for the month. So Maddie is, I'm excited to get her to come up here when Lonnie Banner comes to introduce him and really get to know her. So make sure you get to say hi to her and talk to her. The Rotobuck this morning, the drawing's $10 and the jackpot is $346, and I'll ask Larry to draw the number. The last 4 digits is 0321. Larry, want to check mine? Oh, no, Ed. Good. Mr. Sogan.
Oh.
It is in there. Remember, kind words can be short and easy to speak, but their echoes are truly endless. Thank you for being here today and have a great week.